an organization that visions every child being trained to advocate for every right for everyone. He is also the national convener and founder of the Nine is Mine campaign, an initiative of, for, and by the children to advocate for appropriate public investment in children. Steve is the Asia Level Advocacy Coordinator for Edmund Rice International, based here in Geneva. He has facilitated child-led interactions with policymakers and leaders at village, state, national, and international levels, including the United Nations in Geneva and New York. And for those of you who know Steve, as I do, you would agree with me that he lives and breathes advocacy and challenges each one of us to do the same. Steve, it is my privilege to invite you to share your stories and experiences on walking in the footsteps of Edmund the Advocate today.
Thank you, Tino, and thank you, Gibbs, for that wonderful introduction that brought us back to Ireland, Waterford, where you are, and the spirit of our founder. With his beatification in 1996, the life of Edmund had been presented as a role model for everyone. Pratik is each and every one in Hindi. Edmund's dream of a world fit for all is the dream of Pratik. Our logo is a non-religious version of the Christian Brothers logo, and their chapter calls to new beginnings with Edmund in the current context setting, with the current context setting the agenda. E stands for Edmund, E for everyone. With Edmund, Pratik envisions a world in which children advocate for inclusive, sustainable, participatory, and just earth communities. I would invite you to do a namaste and to honor the divine in yourselves in this web circle and all members of our earth community. With Edmund before the Blessed Sacrament, we embrace our own call to be mystics in the marketplace, mystics on the margins. I now invite you to form fists and join them together in the Mustika Mudra, the hand gesture of compassion, as you pray for the gift of oneness with the entire earth community as brother and sister. Let us attempt to build discerning teams and generative circles as opposed to pyramids of power, prestige, politics, and position. And finally, I invite you to the Nirvana Mudra, the hand gesture of liberation. Do a namaste, turn over your palms, cross them over, and join them together in this dislocating gesture, even as you touch the hand to your forehead and your mystical eye. As you do so, remember Edmund, for whom the world and its liberation was his agenda. May we have the courage and generosity of Edmund to address systems that make and keep the people and the earth poor. It was in Ballybricken and the Keys of Waterford that Edmund found his mission. Pratik therefore educates children of vulnerable communities in the neighborhood as role models who embody advocacy and other practices of safe and rights-based environment. I invite each of you to note the words in red, which are human rights criteria, which you could use in your own context to gauge the human rights, or should I say, the Edmund rights temperature of your own schools, organizations, ministries, communities, and families. Educating the poor was considered a dangerous activity in those penal times. Others used to teach obedience of the lawful authority. The quality education of Edmund advised the young in religion and citizenship. Pratik endeavors to embed justice into the curriculum, wherein every adult of the school communities is conscientized while conscientizing the young on systemic injustices, in the art of advocacy and government's accountability, and towards mystical proactivism, while nurturing thousands of Black Johnnies, Biancanis, Gretas, and Malalas as a result. While Edmund educated for liberation through his own schools, he also engaged with vulnerable people associated with other charities and NGOs. Most striking to me was the Waterford Mendicity Asylum that catered to men, women, boys, and girls affected by crop failure and famine, and who consequently resorted to begging. The brothers of Edmund engaged with these children even as they continued to provide affordable, actually gratuitous, and quality education with nutritious food and dignified clothing, all available to them at their doorstep. Pratik attempts to connect with varied vulnerable citizens across the country through other organizations to nurture young citizens as global goalkeepers, child rights holders, and earth proactivists. Edmund enabled the participation of all into his system. To him, Black lives did matter, asylum seekers were welcome, and the poor disenfranchised Catholics of penal times were his priority. Pratik too attempts to bring together all the children of neighborhoods to create inclusive children's parliaments towards making all rights accessible to all children. We hope to have our second national parliament of these federated children's parliaments in India, engaging with members of parliament in Delhi in national parliament on Child Rights Day this November, even if we have to resort to a COVID online version. There is documented proof that Edmund assisted in legal advocacy for the Mary Power charity. But significant is Edmund's praise of the brothers who stood by the gallows of two convicted trade unionists in an era where there was no access to redressal for the poor. Edmund and his brothers risked the same, even if it meant losing the funds of their businessmen friends and their middle-class benefactors. At Pratik, we hope to promote a child's right to genuine engagement with power holders and duty bearers in all matters affecting their future and, more importantly, their present, even at the risk of losing our own registration as an organization and our FCRA. Edmund opted to be a papal order, even at the cost of the division of his own congregation. Encouraging international engagement and platforms of advocacy becomes a means for Pratik to help global citizens, students realize that poverty and inequity are not local issues, but globalized, structural, and premeditated choices. Pratik attempts to promote the obvious links between child rights and earth rights. It promotes sustainable and simple living with embracing the earth and proactive policies, if not the declaration of a climate emergency. Unfortunately, Edmund was born at a time when the science of the universe story, earth rights and climate change, were not known. Hence, we could pardon him for having a business based on providing meat products to the British Army. Is that one of the reasons why so many highlighted passages of his Bible allure towards amassing wealth at the cost of the poor? Pratik attempts to empower collaborations with all child rights organizations and movements as a non-negotiable for social change, even as it consciously chooses to underplay its own green brand and e-logo to promote the more inclusive and shared 9 campaign which it convenes. It would be appropriate to announce here that after 14 years of advocacy, 9 can finally celebrate the inclusion of 6% for education as an entitlement under the new education policy. This collaborative piece is absolutely in sync with Edmund, who was a trustee of at least 7 charities. In the spirit of non-discrimination, Edmund was also the management committee of a Protestant-led charity started in 1821. Edmund was known to always shun the limelight. There is no account of him using any media strategy to promote his work, even for fundraising. Pratik, in contrast, seeks to embolden its communication systems and media strategies to provide rights-based information, to raise political will, and to build public consensus on important child and earth rights issues, even as Big Brother watches over our shoulders. Edmund chooses to form religious communities of brothers as opposed to his familiar business models to address social issues. The evolving spirit of Edmund invites the brothers, if not the Edmund Rice family and the world, to follow sociocratic structures that enhance capacity for genuine participation of each member towards decentralizing power and decision making. Pratik attempts to involve its governors, staff, and beneficiaries into generative circles and leadership e-teams. Edmund displayed great business acumen, legal expertise, practical common sense, and a capacity for hard work. He ensured a sustainable system that would last the test of time. Yet, he opted out of the National Board of Education, which would compromise on his values. He did so even at the risk of his entire enterprise collapsing. Edmund himself wrote, "The Institute being the work of God and for God, its existence does not depend on man. And those whose motto is Providence is our inheritance will never be forsaken." While Pratik hopes to diversify its funding sources, it embraces the challenge of making choices in defense of truth, justice, rights, and integrity, and pay the consequent price of freedom. Like Edmund, we are all being invited to entrench systems that would reflect the God we worship. Pratik too hopes that as humanly fragile as we are, we continue to strive towards ensuring that our policies, practices, processes, and personnel model our organizational values with utmost integrity. We released today our mobile app called E-Certing Rights, which provides students and adults an opportunity to learn the science of advocacy. Please download your free Edmund Rice birthday gift from the Google Play Store today. Finally, we release our version of the Nobel Peace Prize for Children today to promote child advocacy. It is called the Child Rights Kids Award. We hope to create a culture of child-led advocacy to the process. Please visit www.pratik.org.in/awards for more details. This is a summary of the red indicators to gauge the Edmund Rights temperature of your schools and communities, your governments, and all leadership teams. Live Edmund the advocate in our schools, in our organizations, in our world, and in our hearts forever.